BC, for a football guy, I reconciled the pressers yesterday in my head. A lot of philosoph, a lot of feel good kind of culture stuff, man, that I think
Mhm.
is going to be pretty critical for this team going forward. Given who spoke, were you surprised the direction the pressers seemed to take, or did you guys just kind of feed off Sat making himself super vulnerable early on?
No, I knew he would be asked about that, and I thought he handled it really as well as anybody could in that situation.
He's a real dude.
Yeah, I think that too. I'm not doing this to bring up old stuff, but I thought too much was made about one slip he had last offseason and the yards per play comment, which anybody who's on air or answers questions for like 10 to 15 minutes knows that you can have a verbal slip. You're bound to have something like that happen. And I bring that up only because the next time this was off camera, um, he made a joke about it with some of the media, and for whatever reason that kind of stuck with me. Just the humility to he came in that next time, he wore it, had some humor about it, and I'm bringing that story up because I've always liked his personality too, um, and I thought yesterday the fan base got to see that, him talk about something that's difficult to go through, and he handled it in a way that I think his players are going to admire, and it's really good for the program.
Yeah, BC, I know that, I don't want to stay on this particular point for too long, but I do think there's, uh, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this. Do you think yesterday and that vulnerability that Satterfield gave changed sort of the narrative around him? Because it had been largely kind of negative, whether it was the play calling from last year that we can't separate from being the tight ends coach, or not getting his salary changed from being the
Hmm.
tight ends coach. Like, do you think that what we heard yesterday changed the way people perceive him?
Yeah, I think it'll help some people move on from the whole, oh, he's getting paid 1.4 million to coach tight ends. I do that
Should have
too.
taken the
That
and ran. That'd have been
Yeah, he
worse.
could have gotten $1.5 million
I'm not
to not
sticking
do
around if I
anything.
get demoted.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And when he talked yesterday about, it's like a player. We preach to them. There's going to be adversity. It's like getting benched, going from first team to second team. You
I've been
take it. Yeah, you take it. You learn from things. There's some things that were outside of your control within it. I heard you guys last segment, and there's a throw that to Lyndon Meyer against Illinois that changes things, a kick here or there. I mean, there's all sorts of factors that play into it. But I think you saw in Haarberg's answers later just their true respect. And I thought Haarberg going up there after him really tied it all together, and it was very complimentary. And how you saw, okay, this is what the coach said, but this is how a player sees it. He sees what his coach did and sticking around, and how he said, I'd go fight for that guy in any battle, and I saw how it was in 23 when we're just scrapping to get a win. I think all that stuff's going to resonate and kind of push the conversation beyond what it's been. I do.
BC, do you, with that conversation that Harburg had, or kind of the comments that Harburg had about Satterfield and what that was like there, like, do you see kind of correlations between those two guys being a little maligned and being um,
Hmm.
sort of, I don't want to say,
They're the yeah but guys.
yeah, that's a great way to put it. They're
Yeah.
the yeah but guys. It's like, yeah, the tight end room has been good, but he was so bad as offensive coordinator. Or yeah, he kind of saved us in 2023, but he wasn't good
Yeah.
enough to get us to a bowl game. Like, do you see sort of that connection between those two guys, even in just those brief comments?
Yep, there's a real kinship, and I like that Heinrich's like, I'm not trying to speak for Sat here, but I this is how I feel. There is a connection in that regard. It's old man in the arena quote, like there's two guys who were in the arena, and you put it on the line and you see all the work the other person does, even if it fails, and that that means a lot to you. And that relationship, you can tell, is genuine, And that, I think, is why that press conference was good yesterday. Is it wasn't when Heinrich got up there, I think anybody watching it or listening to it could tell that was from the heart, as he really wanted to talk about Sat in that way. And I think that, this fan base loves people who stick something out too. Like they will take their jabs at someone as they're struggling or whatever. But at the end of the day, it has always been a fan base that really admires a person who hangs in there with this program and sees the good parts of this program and can overlook some of the potholes. And I think this fan base is probably going to come more to that with Marcus Satterfield now after yesterday's press conference. I do think it was useful in just kind of pushing us past that storyline or whatever sort of hovered whenever that conversation came up.
And BC, and I've said this, and I hope it continues to play out. Let's not act like everybody in that room isn't getting better too, right? I mean, Lindemeyer's going to have a chance to get played. Fedoni got drafted. He went in depth a little bit about Carter Nelson. We know that Eric Ingerson's coming. Like a lot of these guys, Mark Way, we heard Coach Holgerson in New York say one of the first things I noticed is his ability to work with Coach Raiola. I don't have to worry about the run game. Like, pretty good tight ends coach too, even though we kind of undersell tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be integral in this offense. So I would caution that we better not do that.
Yeah, it's one of the more interesting position groups when you just go through the names. I mean, everybody always talks over Lindenmeyer, and he's like the leader of the room. Haarberg, of course, has just a fascinating story of what can he do with his potential, but having to pick it up quick. Then you hear a name like Echternock, come up yesterday as a walk-on who has come on and, could fight for the rotation. And I know there's other guys as well sort of trying to knock on that door. We'll see if Mark Way, where he is, by summer, fall, and Carter Nelson as well. But you hear that Carter Nelson's up to 238, and you can just tell the excitement on the coaching staff about like what could happen there. Obviously, there's going to have to be a lot of work put in, but they see all the traits in him, and they're going to want to develop him, and that's going to be fun. And so, yeah, he's got an exciting room, and I think he always has said this even when he was OC about tight ends. It's the position that has to do like everything. And to him, I think it truly is the best position on the football field. So I took him at his word when he said, I'm having the best time of my coaching life, or whatever that quote was there at the end. I feel like, he probably has some weight off his shoulders now, and he's just coaching ball. And by the way, he's a good recruiter. He spots guys that are, maybe going to take off in this program. And he's been good in Colorado. And like a guy like Jordan Ochoa is a guy that he was kind of in on. And he's always kind of brought up in that category too, as a recruiter. And that tells me a lot about someone who just put his head down after all this and still went to work at all those things.
How about Ochoa? Because I want to get to Dvorak and kind of what he talked about yesterday about staying in the moment, but kind of that symbiotic thing that he's got to have going on with Terry and Coach Simpson, where you look at guys like Ochoa, they have so many poster child candidates for eye for evaluation, patience, development, like splash. And he's got a couple of prime candidates. He is Dvorak with guys like that he can put on full display this year as well.
Yeah. He's got a really interesting room, Dvorak, when you think of, you bring in a new guy, but who has just a stacked resume at a different level, wants to prove it in Watson Trent. Obviously, the whole Javen Wright story, and I think that's going to be fascinating, just seeing what he can do when he actually gets the practice time. And then I thought his Dvorak's best quote to me was when he was asked about, Vincent Shavers, and just like that constant, like, yesterday's yesterday. We're moving on from that. Whatever meeting you're in, whatever moment you're in, that's where the focus is, and getting something out of that, and what he's driving home to Shavers. And I can't lie. When we were over there the other day, and it's only like a 25-minute segment that we were watching, and I was watching the defense in the Hawks, and Shavers, man, my eyes just drawn to that guy. Like he's just the way he moves and stuff. It's exciting, but I think he's got the coach with the right temperament for his talent and his potential to work with him and like just keep pushing, man. You've done some stuff, but there's more. And I think Shavers has that kind of mindset from the times I've talked to him too. So I'm excited how that relationship just keeps building.
Wait, weren't you the Scorsese with the behind the phone? What did Brunt refer to you as? Is the because the footage?
Oh,
phone and Brunt's was like BC with the Scorsese. Who was the director that he referred you to?
yeah, Scorsese. It's an ongoing joke.
Did that with
Brunt's
your
has. Yeah, I do iPhone videos for us, and they're very elementary compared to the TV people.
I thought that was pretty crisp. I'm like, that's not his phone.
Yeah, I did it with the phone. So Bruns will always call me the Scorsese or the Ang Lee of practice footage. Ongoing joke. But yeah, people can check out that amazing footage on Husker247 if they want to. But yeah, that was my responsibility, just holding up my phone like a little dork and trying to capture the moment, capture Terry Braden at work.
He must be an incredible person because according to you and Shafe, he just ruins you guys and you just chuckle it up and shake it off. Bruns must be an amazing person.
Well, he always wears that A's hat, so you're like, okay, buddy, you're dealing with some things, so I'll let it slide. That's how that works.
Oh, wow.
Said the Twins fan.
Although they got 6 in the first last
Yeah.
night, I think they'll beat the Fathers again today, man. The A's, I actually like their roster, BC, not to derail you.
No, that's okay. Brunson and I like the A's too, because the A's and Twins are basically a paired organization. Every guy eventually plays for one or the other. Like a Ravi Grossman always comes through and is on one of our rosters. So Brunson and I always compare notes. We're like, oh, yeah, he was with the Twins in 2019, and he's still hitting 221. That's awesome.
He's still hitting 221. We're talking with Brian Christopherson, Husker247. With that answer about Vincent Shavers, I think most people's minds kind of went to like, hey, it doesn't matter what you accomplished last year. You still have to work and do it today. I also kind of thought about it from the other side of the coin. Do you think it also applies to guys that maybe haven't been able to break through yet or have even been disappointing up until this point in their careers, that they still have an opportunity to get out there and get it done?
Yeah, absolutely. And he also stressed, like, I just want to see these guys play as much as you can to make decisions. And there's going to be, I don't know exactly who's going to settle into sort of those, I guess you'd call them like 4 through 6 spots, like in the linebacker room. I mean, there's some interesting guys who have sort of been around 2 or 3 years. I know they like move Ramir Stewart up there. Dylan Rogers still over there. Jacob Bauer's a walk-on who pops up in conversation here and there. So I think there's some guys who maybe they're not going to start this fall at backer, but they have to see an opportunity where I could carve out a role on this team that's pretty significant. So I'm sure he was talking to his whole room. I know he was, because he said this isn't just about Vincent, this is about everybody. So he kept coming home to that point.
BC, when you're perusing, and I get it, you're at the mercy of the time of where guys are, but you have such a good relationship. Why don't you ask or tell Keith that media, we should get to start with go inside, or not where the defense is, or wherever the good stuff's happening, and see if you can get him to put a bug in Coach Rule's ear, because I think you have some pull, BC. You just don't want to shoot your shot?
Inside the walls, you mean, like conversations like that? What are you talking about here?
Hey, Keith, you know what? Let's start out here. Let's see if you can put us in here. What do you think about that?
Hey, if you can make that happen, I know you've got some sway. So whatever you can do to push that forward.
I lost all pull. Coach Rule is not happy that Hell Varsity pumped out the picture of him looking a little cold.
Really?
Which was kind of funny, because do you know what he was doing in that picture? Like, if you go to Hell Varsity, you see this photo, he looks like he's freezing.
Mm-hmm.
but he's making fun of Kristen Coggins.
Oh, it was a
acting like-
misrepresentation, huh?
Yeah, so for acting like she's cold, and that picture got caught, and I don't know, man. I couldn't tell if he was not happy or happy, but I know
I'm just saying that Photoshop job has Austin Jacobson written
all
all
over it. Dude,
A lot.
how
I mean,
sick
a
is that
lot of times he rolls in and like when it's like 40 degrees practices, he'll have like shorts on. So, so that's it. Probably does mean something to him. I liked that yesterday. Someone caught him with not caught him. I thought it was awesome. He had the coffee in his hand out there, and that's like how I'd be coaching.
he definitely has a coffee guy. You know why he does that, and he did this when Coach Cook talked at the press conference too. He had just left, or at the coaches clinic. He had just gotten off the treadmill in the weight room, even though he had just gone through a workout before that. And I'm like, it's kind of weird. Like, you got to calm down. You never know when you got to be ready. You never know when you got to be ready. I might have to hop in a drill. So he wears shorts and tennis shoes like that in case he feels compelled to have to get in a drill.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
He dresses to be ready. Now, whether he hurt himself or not is something altogether different, but he's going to shoot his shot.
Yeah, I get that. That's why, I mean, I always wear this Sports Writer North face, so I'm at the ready to type out a story at any time. You gotta have the right wear on to perform.
Let me ask you. Wow. If you're looking at kind of situationally what you want Nebraska to be able to do on defense, where does finding a bona fide pass rusher rank when you go through the rundowns of what you want them to do?
It has to be like number 1 or 2, honestly.
Like ahead of scheme, ahead of.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be like a 1B or 2 on the list. Maybe there's something that you could throw in ahead of it. But I think if you can find those 1 or 2 guys, especially who separate themselves as game wreckers, it's third down, I'm going to go hunt, or not even third down. That changes the whole game. And so I think they've got possibilities there. You don't want to talk too much about names at this point, but McGahee is a guy that I'm excited about. So I think McGahee played 117 snaps last year. And if you think about that sample size, he had like 13 tackles, 1.5 TFLs, sack. He had 2 forced fumbles, and he had like 2 or 3 almost forced fumbles. And so I know people say, well, it didn't happen. But you saw that, like, man, he's that close, and he didn't have that much of a runway into his first year. What could he do now in that second season? You don't want to put too much pressure on him, but he's a guy that I'm excited about, and I'm as curious as anybody with McCullough and like how that's going to pop out. But I think there could be others, that emerge. And watching Keona Davis and Williams Winnari the other day work out, just it is what it is, a individual type drills, but I like how they look, at least, and I like how they were getting after it and getting praise from Terry Braden. So there's options to develop this offseason to make that a reality.
We're like kindred spirits, BC. We just keep feeding each other. It's interesting you brought up the almost forced fumble, and that there was a stretch where Coach Butler was talking during the coaching clinic, and he had these cut-ups of what he would call run-bys or almosts.
Yep.
Versus affecting the quarterback, because they're on this affecting the quarterback thing. And he had a couple of clips of his guys kind of overrunning the quarterback, and then he climbs the pocket. Illinois famously, there was a couple against Wisconsin versus a guy, and then he showed a couple of like getting your hand up on a quarterback, and Bullock had a couple, and Shavers had one where he said this needs to be intentional, where when you're rushing the passer, you need to get your hands up or on that quarterback's arm. Don't just get near his feet. It has to be intentional to not have it be a pressure, but a forced, and then you fill in the blank, right? Like, and he had like 8 or 9 clips just ready to roll where you could tell that's something that he's bent on when you say, well, he almost got there. Like they track that stuff to get better, and they want it to be intentional in practice when they work those drills. I thought it was fascinating, just a little minor thing like that. You're talking about 6 inches.
Yep.
but he's got all the cut-ups.
Well, if you want, okay, McGahee last year was an example of had a good season. Don't get me wrong, but almost plays were there. The year before, Javen Wright had in 23 a bunch of almost plays. He got some too, but if you want the ultimate example, I think of that game in Boulder where he almost hit Shedeur Sanders as he's going to throw it. Ends up being a 50-yard pass. Nebraska had momentum. It got wrestled away on that one play. That ends up a 36-14 game. Everyone's like, yeah, Nebraska got waxed and all this stuff. That's the type of play that changes the whole thing. If you can get the, like you're talking about, Damon, it's just a few inches here or there. It's everything.
And they know it. Like I appreciated the fact that they're not resting. Right? I mean, that's kind of maniacal. You know?
Yeah, and I got to think, guys, too, like McGahee and those guys love to, everybody wants to get sacks and those numbers. And so anything you can do, be like, this is how close this was to going as a big play in the stat sheet, all those things you want. If you do this can change it. So, yeah, a few of those plays are the difference between, 7-6 and 9-4 at least, or something like that.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker247. BC, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, B.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.